Hello out there, and in front of you today is the Ruike P662, and this is going to be my last knife review of 2019. I do have a top 10 video of the entire year coming very soon, but this is the last full review, last breakdown of a knife that I'm going to have, and what a great way to finish the year. This has been such an exciting year for me, just the number of knives that I've had in hand, the way the channel has grown and the people that I've met, but finishing with a knife like this, it's awesome because this is essentially what this channel is all about right now, trying to find the best bang for the buck and just an amazing budget knife in front of you from Ruike. And we're going to get back to it in just a second, but I do want to hop over to today's shout out real quickly. Today we are featuring the knives from a guy named Dice EDC, and he is a guy from Norway who's been following the channel for a while. He started getting into knives mostly just from like hiking and fishing, and the photos that you're seeing are his native 5 and then a survival knife, some of his EDC gear, a big collection of knives that he brought on a trip when he did a lot of testing, and then finally one really cool thing, a self-made knife that he says was inspired a little bit by the lines of the Manix 2. And I've got to say, just props to anyone who gets so far into the hobby that they end up making their own knives. I mean, that's just a very cool thing to do, and yeah, much respect for doing that and using something that you created. So yeah, Dice EDC, thanks for the support, thanks for following the channel. Anybody else who wants to get your EDC gear or your knives or anything that you send me on its channel, definitely just send it to jtsknifelife@gmail.com. I always appreciate it, and yeah, we'll get you in line and get you featured in a future video. But now, guys, let's bring it back to this Ruike P662. And this knife was just one that I didn't even know existed. I was on eBay just like checking with a seller's page who I buy from regularly. He lives pretty close to me. And I saw this model and I said, I've got to get it. And it's just a beautiful, great looking knife at an excellent price, 27 bucks. And I know I was going to be reviewing the knife that was part of the holiday giveaway, and I will still post that video, but as good as that knife is, I mean, this one, just the price difference, it sort of blows it out of the water. It's just that exceptional, and it really gives a run for the money to any of the other things sub $30 that I've seen since I started that little like budget blade kind of crusade. So what's so good about it? All right, well, let's start with some size comparisons and compare it to a few things that you might know. And we're going to start with the obvious thing right here. I'm not going to go on record and say this is a leak killer, but there will be a lot of people who look at this knife next to the leak and can't really understand why you would go with the leak. Just based on materials and action and other kinds of qualities, ergos. I mean, the Ruike here, it compares pretty nicely. So there's that. Here is the Sage 5 lightweight. Nope, that's just the Sage 5. Just grabbed the wrong knife. All right, what else do we have? Well, some of the other stuff from the Budget Blade series. So here is that 511 knife that we talked about. And the Ganzo FH71, and that's lining up the tips. So you can see, you know, we're looking at a cutting edge on this knife that is just shy of 3 inches. So probably helps with legality for a number of people as well. What else can I grab? Here is the Boker Gust. Need to clean that guy. All right. And finally, don't know where the PM2 is today, so we'll just go with the 943. All right, so there are some size comparisons. The biggest thing, though, when we talk about weight, I mean, so much when we're thinking about this knife, at least me, it comes back to the Kershaw leak, just because we have pretty similar blade shapes and we have similar weights and just similar ideas. And one of the things that the leak was always so good at was being pretty lightweight. You know, it's a good, light, general EDC kind of knife. Here's the frame lock version coming in right around 3 ounces, a little bit more. And then this one, the liner lock with the like smoke blue and black scales, 2.5 ounces, right? But could the rake really weigh less than that? Look at that. G10 full liners, 2.33 ounces. I mean, that is pretty impressive. If you are someone counting ounces, then this will probably be a very appealing knife to you, because, you know, a lot of times when you get a knife this light, you have to, you know, you're not getting full liners on both sides. You know, you're not getting the structure, you know, because you have to get such a light weight. And so this one sort of is a Goldilocks one in that regard, where it really captures a lot of lightness, but it still has the structure and rigidity and strength that you'd want to have on just an EDC knife. Let's take a focused look at this blade. So I'm really a big fan of the blade shape, almost like Wharncliffe sheep's footy, a little bit of belly though. Very attractive. 14C28N is the steel, which is interesting because that other rake that I had for the giveaway, that one had, 12C27, which is a little bit of a lesser steel, but it was more expensive as far as I was understanding. This one, $27-28 for 14C28N. Pretty good value if you are interested in you know, bang for your buck and getting a pretty decent user steel. And my experience with Rake and their 14C28N has been very good, so definitely not going to complain there. Other stuff to know about the blade: it does have a bead blast finish, which is always very good looking, but it's not my favorite finish just because of rust possibilities. That said, I use this knife extensively. I purposefully didn't like clean it immediately just to see how that would go, and haven't really had any issues at all. One other thing that I want to bring to your attention with the blade is just the level of, not really detailed, but the things that they did on the actual blade, specifically the spine, that weren't necessary. All right, so taking a look at it, we have jimping, which isn't great, and we'll get back to in just a second, but then this part right here of the spine is rounded, so you have that level of detail, and then after this like thumb compression, you have a nice long swedge. And so it just seems like a bunch of different kind of like aspects of machining that, again, on a budget knife, like maybe these are subtle things that people overlook or that don't really matter to some people. But when you're looking at, I guess the best way to put it is that when I see something like this much like time going into executing a budget design, it makes me feel good about the rest of the execution, because I know that if you're going to put that much time into a smaller detail, then probably the big things are executed very well as well. And yeah, that's definitely the case. So now let's move on back and hit the jimping. The jimping, it's maybe one of the, I don't know, less impressive aspects of the knife. You can see the jimping doesn't go all the way across the spine, so it does leave that to be desired. It's not particularly deep, so it isn't going to grip the thumb very well. What I found though is that like I didn't want to hold the knife with my thumb really digging into that spot anyway. I wanted to be up here, and I used this little depression a lot when I was cutting with the knife. And what I did find was that when I was using that, or when I was just holding the knife like this, you know, getting like the underneath the knuckle, it didn't provide much traction, but it did provide comfort and just understanding of where my thumb was on the actual spine. So the jimping was useful, even though it wasn't useful in the way that, you know, I would generally want to use it. Now, as we continue to move on back, you can see we have these full liners inside this G10 frame. So no milling or machining on the inside there. Not a problem with that though. I mean, we're dealing with 2.3 ounces. I'll take the structure and keep the weight where it is. That's perfectly fine. And then as we make it all the way to the back, we do have a little bit of a lanyard hole or loop. I'm a big fan of this style of lanyard hole execution, where it's not really invasive. It's just sort of sticking right there at the back of the knife, not really bothering anybody, not interfering with the way that the clip rides. And if you want it, you can use it. If you don't, you're not really going to know that it's there. So, yep, good job on that. And then one interesting thing with Rake that I found, a lot of times with budget knives nowadays, we're seeing like reversible pocket clips. You know, budget knives are being made to appeal to the masses, and Raike's clips are not reversible. A lot of them aren't, at least. So you do have that. It is somewhat of a loop over clip, but it is not particularly deep carry. I think it's perfectly fine. It's a good little clip, but again, it is right side tip up only. All right. Now let's talk about the G10. The G10 is it's a good handle scale. It doesn't have anything really exotic or special going on. The traction here is going to be pretty similar to, say, a Tenacious. I've got a Manix 2 right here, which has significantly like better traction than this, but is there anything lacking in the Raike? No, not really. I mean, it does just fine from a functional standpoint. The only issues that I can see having with the G10 are just a little bit, and let me get it closer, just a little bit of potential sharpness just on the edges of where these scales end. And you can see the way it's machined with just that like groove there. You know, it just it comes to a point. Now that said, you know, when you have the knife in the closed position, where it's a pretty attractive knife, when you have it in the closed position, yeah, you can feel that. Like, if you push down really hard on that, that's not comfortable. You know, so if you're fidgeting and just playing around with the knife, you'll feel that spot, and it might not be the most pleasant thing. But honestly, like if you're using the knife, you're holding it like this, that really isn't bothersome at all, you know. And so when I first got the knife in hand, I was like, oh man, you got this, you have this, these spots back here are a little bit sharp. Well, the way that it's going to fit into the hand, you're not really going to have a problem with that, because like you're not really grabbing those areas, you know. So I didn't have any kind of hot spots. I didn't have any kind of issue with this knife whatsoever in hand. You can see my hand on it with the curvature of, you know, the bottom of the scale, where it fits in. Maybe a little bit more room for someone with a larger hand, but I think if you get you know, anyone with much larger hands than me, you're probably going to want a bigger knife anyway. But that's just, I don't know, that's just speculation. I do like sort of the machining though. I like the choice to machine the scale this way, and sort of, instead of just doing like basic chamfering, make a little bit of a design out of it. So yeah, that's sort of cool. And now when we get into action, opening, closing, lockup, the lockup on this knife is excellent. So I haven't had any kind of movement, left, right, up, down, nothing. It is super secure, and yeah, I mean, and the knife was sort of put through its paces too. So I mean, sometimes when you use a knife for the first time and you use it for more than a few minutes, you'll start to like break it in, and you'll see that lock relax a little bit. Didn't happen at all here. All right, the opening mechanism is just a thumb stud. So you have one thumb stud. You're not really going to be able to open the knife any other way. You can pop it out like with your second hand, and maybe you could pop it out with one. But yeah, you're really just looking at a thumb flick. If you want to slow roll it, the D10 is really strong, so it's sort of hard to slow roll that, because it's going to pop on you, if you see that. But I mean, what I really like to do, I mean, you can spider flick it with that thumb stud left-handed. We're not running on bearings, we're just on washers, I believe. So yeah, I mean, there is just a little bit of, you know, you can feel a little bit of friction. This knife isn't going to be like drop shutty, at least not, you know, in my estimation. I don't want to loosen anything or mess with the lockup, so it is possible maybe that you could, you know, tinker with it a little bit and get it to free drop. But the thing is, the blade is so lightweight that I don't know. I mean, it might take a lot, and I don't know. For me, it just isn't worth it. The knife feels smooth, and the action is good and crisp enough as it is. Centering is pretty much on point. So yeah. $27. I was talking with my buddy Nick Maffei about this knife, and you know, he saw a picture of it, and I was like, dude, just get it. And he picked one up, and he's not really a budget knife guy, and he was pretty darn impressed, because there isn't really anything about this knife to not be impressed with. If you're looking for a small user, you know, it's pretty much as good as what you could ever expect at sub $30. You know, if you're comparing it to the Kershaw Leak, if you're talking about the same steel, you know, excuse me, honestly, I think maybe even a little bit better looking blade shape. You know, you got G10 versus, you know, the material here. You know, it's better in hand than the Kershaw Leak. Simply put, it's better in hand than the Kershaw Leak. The Kershaw Leak is a time-tested design. I'm not going to say a darn thing about it that's bad because I love this knife, and I love the design, and I love Ken Onion, and yada, 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 yada. But if you're a person who doesn't necessarily care about USA made, and you don't care about like history and popularity and this and that, and you just want a really good knife, if I were comparing the two of these, I could completely understand why you would go with the Rake over the Kershaw Leak. Absolutely. That's how good it is. So when we're bringing in the other budget knives from the Budget Blade series, where does this one stack up? That is the question. So currently, our ranking, so we have the Ganzo FH71, which is at the top. The 4-1 is sort of like 1B, if that makes sense. We have the Kershaw Epistle. Where did I put that 511 knife? Right here. So maybe the 511 might jump the Epistle. I don't know, because I mean, both of those knives are sort of pretty much on the same level for me. But the Rake, I don't know. I think we go right here, like right like this. I mean, the Rake is right up there with that Ganzo in terms of, for me, just like the level of execution, the value, what you're getting, the trust that I have in a Rake as a company right now is pretty high, just because everything that I've seen from them is so good. One other thing that I forgot to mention at the beginning of the video, and I should have, God, so stupid, is I'll insert a picture, but there is a 661 that has the same handle shape as this knife, but it has a different blade. So yeah, so if you want to see something with a different kind of blade shape, you can check that out as well. But yeah, as far as the Budget Blade series goes, I mean, it's been great so far. We've had some really good entries, and I've been impressed with the way things have gone. So hopefully that will continue into 2020 with some more really good budget blades, guys. But for now, I mean, yeah, if all we could get was a knife of this caliber, we'd be in really good shape with this Rake, all right? Any questions, comments, complaints, suggestions, let me know down below. What do you think of the Budget Blade series? What would you pick? How do you feel about Rake? Have you had any of their other models? Which ones? Let me know all that stuff in the comments, and I will talk with you soon, guys. Thanks for watching, and take care. Have a good one.